Hi everybody, this is the Cricket Badger podcast.
Each badger marks the track with its own scent.
His black legs are short but very powerful for digging. The name badger probably comes from the French word bêcher, meaning digger.
Hello everybody, welcome along. It is the Cricket Badger podcast. The eagle-eyed amongst you will know that we haven't been doing the IPL dailies as we have done in previous IPLs through this competition. It's been quite a long one. I've had other things to do, but I've been paying attention as the IPL has been going on, and I'm pleased to say I am joined today right from India by Merv. How are you, Merv? Welcome to the podcast.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm very good, thank you, mate. And I watched the final yesterday. Gujarat Titans. Congratulations to Hardik Pandya and to the new franchise in the IPL who lifted the crown. Plenty of excited faces. We'll get into talking about all the Gujarat Titans later on today. But before we go too far into this one, I've kind of moaned a little bit during this IPL, Merv, that it's been going on quite a long time. As far as I can see, and I get pelters from India when I say this because people say, we'll look after our own competition, and quite rightly, you can do. But my take on T20 was that it was bite size, it was fast, it was furious, it was fun, it was razzmatazz. You played your games quickly, and you played your tournaments relatively quickly, and you had the quick hit, an instant fix of excitement. This IPL, to me, seems to have gone on for quite some time.
It is 9 weeks is a really long time to be honest, and we've got two new teams coming in, and I think that's also played a part in this. I would believe, personally, I would think that they would need to go with a semi-final, final sort of an approach instead of playing the regular qualifiers, although it's an exciting format, and that's been the concept when the 8-team IPL was going on. But I guess they should come back to that top four playing, the semi-final format where the winner plays the final directly. That could probably save half a week, but I guess won't have much of difference going forward next season. Given everything is fine, COVID protocols are absolutely in place, we might have an home and away situation. So that could be an additional taxing things for the players, for the entire support staff who's in the bio bubble, to have this home and away 10 teams traveling back and forth. So that's going to be another challenge. So they need to figure out something, but I think about 8 to 9 weeks, I would see it repeating next year, unfortunately, in terms of the length.
I quite like the qualifiers, I must say. I do quite like the fact that the teams that finish top two get kind of double hit as a chance to get through, as a reward for their success in the group stages, to get a double chance to get into the final. I just felt that, I mean, I know what you're saying about COVID and what have you, but I just felt there was maybe the potential for more double headers on some days, because it was very much all the way through, apart from it towards the weekends, very much one game per day. And you could have condensed it a little bit more by that. I mean, one of the things that I think has caused a few people concern in England is the rumours, or the kind of that it might be stretching to 6 months of the year. I mean, that is overkill, surely, isn't it?
Absolutely. That will be definitely overkill. There is a sense of excitement. There's a sense of looking forward to the IPL, and it works brilliantly well when it's in this once in a year, 6 weeks to 8 weeks sort of a window. Even the last time around, when the IPL had to be broken down into the 6-month gap between India and UAE because of all the COVID-related issues, it was a situation where 2021 ended in October, while the new IPL started in less than 5 months, after the auctions, etc. So that gap at least gave a bit of excitement and something to look forward to, with the two new teams, mega auction, all of those things. But 6 months, definitely, for sure, it'll be an overkill.
Yeah, and 6 months as well has knock-on effects to the rest of world cricket too. As you know, if you want your stars for 6 months, you're effectively denying the countries those stars for 6 months too. I just don't see how it can work. I can understand from the Indian side of things. Indian fans love the IPL, but you've got to think about the bigger picture to a degree. And as I said, I think one of the charms of IPL is the fact that it's quick, it's fast, it's furious, and you find the winner pretty quickly. So that's a good thing for me, rather than stretching it out too long. I think in England, I mean, I think, well, probably more relevant, I think the Big Bash has tried to mimic the IPL to some degree in terms of the structure and the length, and I think it's lost a lot of impetus because of that, because people do lose interest in it and get a little bit bored and kind of dip in, dip out. Where you want to get people immersed into the competition. Let's get into having a look back then over the last 9 weeks and a day, I think it was, or 2 days now, since it all started. And we obviously had the mega auction. We had a lot of people changing shirts. Existing stars going to other franchises, and the 2 new franchises in the Gujarat Titans and the Lucknow Super Giants coming into the competition to make it a 10-team tournament, which was exciting. And obviously, the auction brought in some fresh faces as well. The 2 most successful teams, though, Merv, in IPL history, CSK, MSD side, and obviously the Mumbai Indians, which is actually my team that I follow mostly in the IPL, were always kind of billed at the start of it as being the favourites because of the history. But obviously with the fresh faces and the new personnel and the uncertainty about how teams were going to kind of hit the ground and how they were going to go, both teams had a terrible start and never really recovered, did they?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a bit of a shocker for in the initial few 2-3 weeks to see the champions team behave, and perform the way they did. Especially, I would say CSK more than Mumbai Indians. Why? Because if you look at the auction strategy and the way the auctions were conducted by both Mumbai as well as CSK went in with the strategy that we will kind of get back all the players which they had, most of the players that they had, and they kind of were successful also to doing in terms of the auctions. They bought back most of the players which they originally had. Mumbai, however, had a different strategy. They had a few key players moved out to other franchise. You saw that a lot of the chopping and changing happening within the core setup of Mumbai. So with an auction strategy point of view, the disappointment with CSK in those initial few weeks would have been much more, given the fact that it was the same set of guys reappearing again and not performing to the full tilt which you wanted it to. I think you're on mute.
I'm not on mute now. One of the things on the from Mumbai Indians' point of view, I was having a slurp of my coffee. I didn't want listeners to hear me slurping my coffee. That's why I muted myself. Mumbai Indians, they spent an awful lot of money on Ishan Kishan at the mega auction, didn't they? And they let the likes of Hardik Pandya go. And obviously, with hindsight, the benefit of hindsight. But even at the time, they seemed like they'd put a lot of their faith into one player, and he didn't really return the lack, did he, in terms of the spend on him? And then they see Hardik Pandya going somewhere else and lifting the trophy as captain. That will have hurt Mumbai in terms of their strategic approach, won't it?
Yeah, definitely it would. So if you look at Ishan Kishan, he had a breakout season in 2020 when the IPL was in UAE. He got close to about 350-400 runs in that IPL. But one of the major criteria there that he was scoring at about 140-150. He was scoring at a very hefty, fast pace right at the top of the innings. Here he was quite inconsistent this season, and even for the last year also he had a pretty bad season. But they were looking at him like a long-term investment, looking for a potential captain candidate in the seasons to come for Mumbai. So that was their thinking, but unfortunately, those investments didn't pay dividends this season. He scored at a strike rate of 120. Still had a season with 400 plus runs, but wasn't very consistent like what Mumbai Indians fans and the management would have expected them, like the breakout season that we had a couple of years back.
You can see on the screen, it says post a question we will discuss. We will happy to talk about anything you want to bring up, but you can contact us on the @cricket_badger, and you can actually watch it on there as well if you want to spend your time on Twitter all day. But we're going to concentrate mainly on the teams that finished in the top four, because they've had the better seasons. We've mentioned CSK and Mumbai Indians and the rest already. Delhi Capitals just missing out. I actually thought they'd have a better tournament than they did in the end. But let's start. I mean, two new franchises in the tournament, Merv, as we said at the start of it. Gujarat Titans, who we'll talk about towards the end as the winners. But the Lucknow Super Giants. I know I spoke to a couple of people before the tournament started, and we had this theory that maybe one of those teams might cause a bit of a surprise. But for both to get into the final four from a standing start, that's enormous, really, isn't it? I mean, did they, in retrospect, did the fact that they had free reign at the mega auction, did that mean that they came in fresh and they were able to really plan properly, and that bore fruit, do you think?
Yes, I think the bulk part of the auction, bulk part of their success this season has to be given to the way that they went about with their auction strategy. Both teams had incredible depth, especially Lucknow Super Giants, a little bit more compared to Gujarat Titans. They had a lot of depth, both with bat as well as ball. So with their auction strategies, they got things right. The big brains there, Gautam Gambhir, Vikram Solanki, put together. Even for Gujarat Titans, we had some. Vikram Solanki was with Gujarat, but a lot of key cricketing brains who put their mind behind the auction, and I think they had a brilliant auction. They would have had, if not the best, definitely in the top 2, top 3 sort of a kind of picks that they wanted, a kind of balance that you want, a right mix of all-rounders, batsmen, bowlers. So they got a really good pick at the auction itself. So that definitely, yes, played a part in getting them into solid lineups. And some of the decisions which the other franchisees took during the auction of letting go some key players for whatever circumstances, that also kind of played a part, helping them in the auction strategy.
And they, let's say, had free reign. They were able to pick their marquee players effectively from scratch, weren't they? And two of those for Lucknow Super Giants, KL Rahul, who obviously previously had been very, very strong for the Punjab Kings as their captain, and then Quinton de Kock. They both had tremendous seasons, didn't they? And you need your star players to perform if you're going to have. I mean, you obviously need the other players to chip in as well. But the successful teams have their stars performing consistently, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. You need the engine room of the batting, the top 3 to fire, and for Lucknow Super Giants, it was that sort of a season. Quinton de Kock and KL Rahul both having seasons where they've scored 500 plus runs was just brilliant. The place where they could have tried a few things here and there, although they were not really very big certainties to finish in the top 2, and they had to really struggle to get to that. They had a very stiff competition with Rajasthan Royals there to get into that second position. But I think towards the second half of the IPL, we saw them slightly tapering down as a team, and I think that's the point where they could have slightly done a bit of experimentation with, especially with their batting. Because if you look at Rahul, Quinton de Kock, and Deepak Hooda were the top 3 consistently for most games. They scored majority of their runs, and they successfully did it, especially batting first. But when it came to chasing, and when it came to the flexibility, I found them not very flexible with the kind of team that they had, with the kind of balance running down to Jason Holder at number 8, number 9, with so much of variety on display. They definitely could have been a little bit more flexible and adapt to the situation to the way that they wanted. I mean, for me, another striking part is Marcus Stoinis. Marcus Stoinis, if you look at his overall record, if you just read the statistics, you will feel, okay, it's not that bad. 148 strike rate in 10 innings that he's played, he's done his job. No, he hasn't. That 148 strike rate is bumped up with 4 innings out of those 10. In those 4 innings, he has struck about 200. He was striking at 200. So you can imagine the remaining 6 innings, he was just scoring about run a ball. Why? Because he hardly got any time in the middle. He came in at a stage where he hardly had any time to settle down and do anything. He was striking about run a ball in those 6 innings. And hence that overall number looks 148. 48, which looks decent. But definitely there was a case of Stoinis moving slightly up in the order and playing a bit more destructive role and shifting around players with Krunal Pandya, Badoni. There are a lot of options to play with. So just have to ensure that they get their flexibility in place then for the coming season. That was my point of view when it came to Lucknow Super Giants. A brilliant team, both with the bat and ball.
He always frustrates me, Marcus Stoinis. He's went on song, as you say, the 4 times that he scored 200 plus, and when he bowls well, he can be a match winner. But when he's not on song, he can actually go for quite a few with the ball, and as you say, he can get a bit bogged down at times as well. But I mean, I suppose the counter for that is, I mean, as a franchise, if you're looking at 14 group games and you get a player that can win you 4 of those, he's probably repaying the purse, isn't he, to some degree?
Yeah, agree, 100% agree. He's that sort of a marquee player who can make a difference. But he's kind of liked the top of the order when it comes to Big Bash. For Perth, I guess he either opens or plays in the top 3 and has done brilliantly well. But with the IPL in Delhi Capitals, also his previous franchise, he was designated to be that finisher role with Hetmeyer in the last couple of years, where he did a decent job there as well. So yeah, they would need to review. They've got brilliant resources on hand. They just need to review of how they strategize and who goes where and then what they've learned from this season specifically.
The emergence of Mohsin in their team as well. That big thing for them.
Huge thing for him. I mean, a left arm quick bowler bowling at 150 kilometers per hour, a few deliveries, average speed of 140 kilometers per hour, an economy rate of 5.97. That's mind-boggling. 5.97 is his overall economy rate, and in the closing overs, in the death overs, he doesn't go beyond 9 runs and over. That's unbelievable. And
in terms of the economy rate, I mean, usually, you could probably get away with anything less than 10, can't you, as a bowler? But
yes,
generally speaking, it's been a decent season if you're 8 or under. 7 or under is very, very good indeed. 6 and under is just ridiculous, isn't it?
Brilliant. It's just unbelievable. So that's why he's been a major find for them.
Let's move on to the RCB. Now, the RCB have never won the IPL. Had all of those years under Virat Kohli as captain. Flattered this. I mean, I was thinking actually today, if you picked your greatest ever T20 side, you'd probably have Chris Gayle opening with somebody. And then you'd probably have Virat at 3 and AB de Villiers at 4. They had the luxury of those two in their middle order in the powerhouse for a large chunk of their time and never really capitalized on that. And they looked good in periods in this campaign, but as always, they just fell short again, didn't they?
Yeah, so I guess as you said, the limelight is always on the big boys, and the big boys didn't come to the party often enough. They did come to the party. They did, Faf du Plessis had a couple of 80, 90 sort of performances in the first half of the IPL. Glenn Maxwell had a bit of disappointing season, but a glimpses of a couple of things what he could do. So the big boys didn't really fire like the way they should have, and they relied on the on the likes of DK, Shabas to always bail them out game after game. And that strategy may not, continuously work when you are playing a full-fledged season. Virat Kohli this season was striking at 116, the lowest in a decade. In the last decade, he's never scored at that pace. He was literally struggling to get runs and get the momentum up, and people were injecting momentum at the other end while he was playing, which is a very rare phenomenon.
Are we writing Virat off now, or are we saying that this is just a bit of a lull in his career? Because he's been incredible, hasn't he? He's been probably the best batsman on the planet for a large chunk of the last decade. And, look, we'll talk about Joss Butler later, but he came second in the overall runs in a season for his stellar campaign in 2022 this year. But Virat Kohli's record for the most runs in a season, was it 2016? Absolutely astonishing. And will that ever be replicated? Can somebody ever score 1,000 runs in an IPL? I don't think they probably can. So at his best, he's great. He's legendary, but he's just having a poor time, isn't he?
It is. He's going through a real lull phase, and I believe I hope he does bounce back the way he used to play a few years back, or maybe a couple of years back. But this definitely is the most lowest point in his white ball career, because in the red ball I would still go back to 2014 back in England, where he really struggled and then he bounced back in terms of red ball cricket. But in white ball, surely this has to be one of the low points of his career, and hope he bounces back quickly.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't usually settle for being poor, does he? So I imagine that there is nobody on the planet more determined to get back to scoring big runs than Virat Kohli at the moment. So wish him well with that. I actually thought when he had his child, there's this thing called the nappy factor, where because you've had a child, all of a sudden your life changes and your priorities change. It maybe takes the pressure off the cricket, and I thought he would probably explode and be even better, but it's actually gone the other way for Virat at the moment. But I'm sure we'll see him scoring runs again. I mean, Dinesh Karthik, though, he has been exceptional, particularly in the first half of the IPL. I was looking at the stats regularly during the tournament, and he was going along at a ridiculous rate of knots. He was hardly dismissed in the early part of the IPL. He was playing some phenomenal cricket, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was just unbelievable. He was at a different level, and that's why on his own, single-handedly, I would clearly say in that first half, let's say if the first half consisted of 8 games, clearly 3 to 4 games he has won on his own. Either most of the time chasing, but also some absolutely key performances while batting first as well. So a strike rate of 190, close to 200, and to do it consistently over a period of 14 games is definitely not an easy task. And what you could also see, which was very interesting, is that whenever he's trying to strike a single, even trying, he was so fluent. I mean, some of his shots, even to just jog a single, the strokes, I mean, if you did not have those right fielders in the place, those just a tap towards a single that could turn out to be a boundary on any other given day. That was his kind of form, at least in the first half of the IPL, for sure.
What it must be like to be able to time the ball that well. It must be fantastic. We've got some questions coming in. Amit Dooby, hello to you, Amit, one of our regulars. He says only 2 Indian players scored more than 400 runs in the campaign with a strike rate of 145 plus. Rahul Tripathi and Sanju Samson both are not in the T20 squad, he says, but Ishan Kishan is. So he's complaining there, his old Amit, because we have dinosaurs for selectors, he says. What are your opinions on that?
So definitely, I agree with the sentiment around Rahul Tripathi for sure. Rahul Tripathi, season after season, has delivered an IPL. And if you look at his career from 2016, 2017 onwards, he has been that performer which he's carried the team. In fact, when he played for KKR last season, he was in the final versus CSK. He was suffering with cramps and completely dehydrated. But single-handedly, he was the only hope trying to chase down 13, 14 runs and over in that final in Dubai. That shows you the kind of form and the kind of commitment that he has. So he's, I would say, really unfortunate to miss in India spot there. Sanju Samson had a bit of a off season in terms of he had short impactful seasons. He had short innings with impact. We normally see Sanju scoring those big 70s, 80s, 90s. We didn't see that this season. It was short innings, about 30, 40, and he was trying to up the scoring rate. So even we saw him on record saying in a couple of post-match presentations that he, along with the management, have defined a different role while Butler is going ballistic at the other end. So there was a bit of a different approach forcefully on his end. And he also is a very good pick, and also very unfortunate to miss the Indian spot for sure.
Merv, could you just drop off this feed and rejoin us again? Because you're just crackling up a little bit at the moment. So if you drop off and then hit the link again, sure, you'll come back and we might get a slightly better connection. So I'll rub it on whilst you're away. In terms of the Cricket Badger podcast, we are going to be coming along as well during the England against New Zealand series, which is coming up. That starts this week. And plenty more to come as well. We did some county podcasts last summer as well. I think we'll do a few more of those as we go through this English summer. So stay tuned for all of that. Thank you very much indeed as well for all of your listens and your tweets and everything as we've gone through the last few months, because it's been rather busy on the old Cricket Badger podcast Twitter feed as well. So if you're not already following us on the Cricket Badger podcast Twitter, I will put the address on the screen there at cricket_badger, and you'll be able to watch my rants and raves and things about all things cricket as well. Of course, the IPL, if anybody wants to sponsor us, we didn't have a sponsor this time as well. That was another reason why we didn't cover the IPL daily as we had done in previous times. So if anybody wants to sponsor the Cricket Badger podcast and throw a little bit of money behind it, then we will get your brand out there. Of course, we do the live videos now as well as the audio. So you get double bubble, really. We can put your brand visually on the screens, and we can also have your brand audio on the audio podcast that we put out as well. I'm rabbiting on, waiting for Merv to come back now. He might just have left me forever. You're just going to be stuck with me now for the rest of it. Here he is. He's coming back. Thankfully, here he is back again with us. I was thinking there you'd left me, Merv, and I was going to be rabbiting on for the next hour, hoping you were going to come back there. But I've just done a bit of housekeeping in terms of the Cricket Badger podcast. But let's kick on with the rest of the pod, and let's move on to the Rajasthan Royals, who have had a tremendous IPL 2022. It kind of seemed fitting, obviously, after the death of Shane Warne, that his team at the very start of the IPL came up trumps for him and took, got a position all the way through to the final, obviously finishing as the runners-up. Amit, who sent the question in there, mentioned Sanju Samson. He's had a very good season as well for Rajasthan, hasn't he? And has been one of their... We'll talk about Josh Butler towards the end of this, because we can talk about him all year, I think, Josh Butler. But Sanju Samson, some words on him. Can't hear you, Merv. Having some technical problems today. Do apologise for that. We'll get Merv's voice back in just a second, hopefully. But he's basically been very good today, as Merv, because he's sent me some notes. His YouTube, which I'll put on the Twitter, on the podcast when it goes out. I'll give you the link of his YouTube, because he sends me his videos, some statistical analysis of all things cricket. And he's sent me some links of his videos in the past, and they're very much worth watching. So have a click on that and watch his YouTube channel and subscribe to that as we go through. He's frantically trying to get himself heard at the moment. Can you still hear me, Merv? He can hear me, but I can't hear him, which isn't particularly handy, is it? When you do radio, you get very used to just rattling on and keeping things going. He's dropped off. Is he coming back on? I think he might be trying a different device here, so hopefully he'll reappear very quickly. When you do radio, you can't let dead air. So like this, you just keep parroting away until you're able to speak again. Abby, thank you very much for all of your questions. One of his questions that came in was, which was the worst IPL umpiring or IPL commentary? Amit, you can't just concentrate on the worst stuff. Be positive, man. Be positive. Struggling here with Merv, aren't we? Should have just kept him crackly. Told him to bounce off and come back on again, and not doing very well here, are we? So you've just got my ugly mug on the screen at the moment. Send in your comments and your suggestions. He sent me a private message here. I can't hear you at all. You're just buffering at the moment, Merv. He's trying to get back on. But if you want to get in touch with us on the comments on Twitter or on the Facebook, if you're watching on Facebook or indeed on YouTube, send your comments in, and we can bring those up. And I get Merv back. Here he is. Hopefully, now we've got 3 Mervs. Let's remove the middle one. Can you hear me now, Merv? I can't hear you. Anybody that can lip read is having a really good time at the moment with Murph. He's saying some really good stuff. He's struggling at the minute to get his microphone working. But he's a whiz kid on the stats and stuff, so I mean, must be able to get this sorted out at some stage. I heard something.
Great. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Hey, put the flags out. We're
Great.
back.
Finally. Not sure what that glitch was. Sorry.
Well, I did very well there, Merv. I kept rattling on until you rejoined me, so I'm glad you're back because I was running out of stuff to say. As I said, any comments that you have, put a question. Any comments about the IPL, feel free to jump them on, and we'll address those as we did with Amit's comments early on. But we were coming back to Rajasthan Royals there and Sanju Samson, his season, Merv, and you were going to talk about him.
Yeah. So he, from a strike rate perspective, he's improved quite a bit. Like he was scoring at about 150, 160 plus, and to do it consistently throughout the season is a massive achievement to do it. But there's one specific area which he's kind of improved a lot, and he's come a long way. Usually when it comes to spinners or playing against spin, most captains would want to turn the ball away or take the ball away from your hitting arc. That's the general matchup in T20 all over the world, which captains kind of follow. What we saw last year and the years before that Sanju against leg spinners and left arm spinners, being a right-hander, and the ball would be taken away from him and away from his hitting arc, was kind of rotating strike and scoring at about 80-90 strike rate and giving an opportunity to the guy at the other end to go gung-ho. This season, what we saw is for some reason, he really took on the attack even against the wrist spinner bowling away from him. He was scoring at about 130, 140. So his mindset and his approach this year with that redefined role within the Royals camp was that he has to play short, impactful innings. If he plays and it plays a long innings, it's fine. But it was a very clear role of playing short innings, but very impactful in terms of very high strike rate. And that's what the kind of mantra they kind of followed even right towards the end, even in the final. And that's a key difference if you see between that approach and the KL Rahul approach. The KL Rahul approach will give you runs. And we've seen a lot of pundits, a lot of chatter over social media about the approach of KL Rahul. And there's been a heavy amount of criticism also, and for the right reasons. So there have been a lot of pundits like Sanjay Manjrekar, and they've kind of said that Rahul should not be playing longer, but he has to play faster. So in the effort of playing faster, he can play a shorter innings, an impactful innings, rather than playing a long innings. So that's been a difference.
I sometimes think with KL though, and I get your opinion on this current season, but in his previous incarnations with Punjab Kings, Kings 11, whatever they've been called down the years, I always felt that he didn't trust his middle order, and he therefore had to see it through himself. He felt he had to take the responsibility. Has he had the same kind of mentality this time?
It looks this way, but they really did not. Like as we mentioned about Lucknow Super Giants, the kind of depth and the kind of talent and the skill that guys like Huda, Krunal Pandya, Stoinis, Jason Holder, these are household names in T20 cricket, and they could do the damage like they've done for their previous franchise. So lack of trust with Punjab, I can understand, but definitely not. Shouldn't be having that with LSG for sure.
I can definitely understand it with Punjab Kings because they always let him down. But anyway, and especially when they needed 3 off the last over, they even let him down. But the and by the way, Merv, all your perseverance and reconnecting paid off because it's got a much better line now, so we can hear you crystal clear. So well done on that.
Brilliant.
The Bolt and Krishna power play squeeze. Pivotal for Rajasthan Royals. I mean, Trent Bolt's incredible, isn't he?
Yeah.
Very accurate, but bowling is important, isn't it? I mean, we always seem to concentrate largely on the batting and people scoring centuries, and we'll talk about Josh Butler in a second, but you need your bowlers too.
Yes, and then what a partnership for Royals, which has turned out this season. I mean, Prasidh Krishna has been an improving bowler season by season. Even last season for KKR, he did quite well. But the way that he's, kind of partnered together with Trent Bolt in that power play, both of them have been conceding below 6.5 consistently. Now that speaks volumes, that tells you that they are not giving the opposition any momentum in that power play. When teams are trying to score 50 in that first six, these two guys either picking up a wicket each or a one wicket between themselves and tying them down to under 40, which means they really have to make that play in the middle overs. And the fact that they've been doing consistently, and the fact that they have Chahal and Ashwin coming in those middle overs, that's been one of their brilliant successes this season. They're one of those rare teams who have gone with this five bowler combination, and they don't really have to go with for a sixth bowler or a seventh bowler option just in case one of them is having an off day.
And that really helps you balance as well, doesn't it? If you can rely on your five premier bowlers to deliver more often than not, it means you can add an extra batsman. You can really start to actually play around with your middle order and what have you, and your batting's better as well, isn't it? Amit's come back in. I like this suggestion. He says KL Rahul is the batting equivalent of a Ferrari, but he's happy to be a Toyota. No disrespect to Toyota, but I can see where he's coming from with that, because he's got all of the shots, hasn't he? When he wants to have, he's got all of the shots. But he doesn't quite always go along at the strike rate. I mean, that going back to your KL Rahul comments there about batting too slowly, you very rarely see a team get bowled out in T20, do you? And most teams in T20 can, back down to 8, 9, probably even 10 and 11 on occasions. You can rely on your lower order to fire. So in reality, really, I mean, we always talk about the top three because they have the power plays and they are the engine room and in the top order. But they can maybe be a little bit more reckless because they do have people coming in further down, and maybe that's where KL, as we say, doesn't necessarily trust the people coming in further down and wants to do it all himself.
Yeah, I mean, and I really can't, believe with this LSG setup, definitely, when there are so many resources who can handle the bat. If you really dig deep into that batting order of LSG, you have guys like Avish Khan can hold the bat, and they can kind of score. I mean, their primary job is to bowl and bowl those 4 overs. But if need be, for 8, 10, 9 balls, if they are required down in the 18th, 19th over, they can still swing the bat around. I mean, so it's more for KL Rahul. It's more about the mindset. A lot of these pundits have also mentioned when he plays for India, he knows these big guns, Rishabh Pant, Hardik Pandya, and the celebrated top half of the batting is there, and his mindset and his approach in a T20 international is very different than what he does within an IPL franchise. And I think he just needs to be replicating that mindset when he plays within the IPL as well.
2 questions before we move on to Rajasthan Royals, Merv. I know where you live. That sounds sinister, doesn't it? I know where you live. Are you an RCB fan?
Oh, yes, indeed. I am an RCB fan, a disappointed RCB fan this season.
So, I mean, going back to our conversation about RCB, will they ever win it?
So they need to ensure that the big boys fire. I mean, this year they had a very well-rounded team, to be very honest. Their bowling, the overs which Glenn Maxwell and Shahbaz was giving them, was helping them balance the team brilliantly. They were filling in some overs of Siraj, who had an awful season. So they had a pretty well-rounded bowling attack from a bowling perspective. Hazelwood is going from strength to strength when it comes to white ball cricket. And they had a good mix of seam as well as spin options this year. And the bowling could deliver 9 times out of 10 and has delivered 9 times out of 10 even in the future and even in this season. From a batting standpoint, I think that's where those big guys, if they be a bit more consistent, that's where I get they can actually challenge to get into that silverware finally. They would need those big guys to fire and fire consistently.
Other question I wanted to ask you was there's a lot of talk in the UK about England's travails in Test cricket at the moment. Can they get back to winning ways? Can they actually score some runs? Is it the fault of the county championship? And I've had many a discussion because I'm a big supporter of the domestic structure in the UK. And I think that a lot of that is that, I mean, I'm a Yorkshire fan in England, and Yorkshire's been around for hundreds of years, 150 something. I've not been around for quite that long, but the there is that loyalty, that long-term investment in a team. Your team, you kind of support them through the ups and downs. You know the downs. You're an RCB fan, but the that was a dig. But I think that thick and thin approach means that you have that bond with that side. I know there are Indians who follow their franchises regardless of who their players are. That, the mega auction could rip them apart, have a whole new set of personnel, and you as an RCB fan will support whoever's wearing the shirt. But I also know there are fans in franchise cricket who have maybe, I don't know, say MSD, who is the highest profile cricketer and probably the most supported cricketer in India. If he left CSK and went to the Delhi Capitals, for example, a lot of those fans would suddenly become Delhi Capitals fans because they're MSD fans effectively. Is that how it works, you think?
Yeah, I would definitely presume so. Franchise cricket, there is as you mentioned, a very high percentage fans. No matter who would wear this shirt, they will keep supporting that team. But there is a significant chunk of franchise cricket fans all around the world who support a franchise because of a certain personality, and that's definitely. I saw one tweet recently when somebody who does not really follow franchise cricket, and he was very up and honest about it. He mentioned that he can't understand that he doesn't even see half of the squad of core Karnataka players playing for RCB, and we have less than 25% of the players who have played or who are based out of Karnataka for Bangalore. And then there was an apt reply from most of the guys saying that franchise cricket is that way. You have core players who've been from that region, but you also have a bigger chunk of fan following because of an XYZ X factor player who's been playing there and who's been associated with that franchise and has technically had a second home there. So tomorrow, as you mentioned, if Delhi Capitals has MS Dhoni, you would see a big chunk of the followers moving there.
A comment here. Your dejected face, Merv, shows the face of a man who is bogged down by hope of an RCB win for 15 straight years. That's a nice comment, isn't it? Let's move on then to the winners. Gujarat Titans, who weren't even a thing, were they? Just a few months ago. Gujarat Titans it created, they recruited their players, and they had their ground. And away they go, and they win the thing at the first attempt, just like Rajasthan Royals did all the way back in 2008. Let's go through. In fact, actually, before we do, we missed out. I said we'd talk about Joss Butler later. We didn't mention him, did we, in that Rajasthan Royals? We should talk about Joss Butler, shouldn't we? Because he has had a phenomenal season, the Englishman. Absolutely. 4 centuries, wasn't it, in the end?
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, that's a season which you would want to die for, really. 800 plus runs, 50 plus average, and you know what Butler can do when he bats deep. So, and one very interesting thing which he also mentioned in one of the post-match presentations, I think it was during the second qualifier, he has seen himself doing 2 roles during this course of the season. He's either on a certain given day assessed the opposition, the wicket and the situation, and then gone bang, 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 right in the power play. Or he's also done the opposite, which he did against in one of the games in Eden Gardens, where in the first half of his innings, he was going at a runner ball or slightly over a runner ball. And then he really tore apart and he really became the Butler that we all know him. So internally within himself, as a mindset, he has been flexible and he has been kind of adjusting and readjusting his role beautifully well. And to add to all of that, because he's blessed with such amazing hand-eye coordination, that has enabled his skill versus mindset. What a perfect marriage and combination that has been for Royals this year.
Do you think he's the best white ball batsman in the world at the moment?
I would say so. Definitely. In the kind of form that he is.
Yeah, you'd struggle to. I mean, I think over the long term, he's been very good. He's been right up there. And the ICC rankings don't necessarily always suggest that, but that depends on how you play, how many games you play, and various other things, isn't it? But for me, if I was picking a World 11 right now in terms of white ball, he'd be the first name on the team sheet. Because I just think he's an incredible player. My only concern is that because he's done so well in the IPL, like they did in 2018, they'll suddenly think, oh, he's a Test player again. And I think Josh Butler, you give him one ball to think about, one ball to focus on, one colour ball, and I think he's wonderful. I think if you start to confuse him by changing the colour of the balls, and he has to try and change his technique from week to week, I think that's when he gets a little bit confused and bamboozled. I think if we just let Josh stay as a white ball player in England, ultimately give him the captaincy of England after Owen Morgan retires, I think we will see a wonderful Josh Butler over the next few years in English white ball cricket and indeed in further IPLs.
Exactly, the clarity of mindset, like, as I mentioned, his mindset was so very crystal clear this season, and a crystal clear mindset going with that sort of skill set, he can be an absolute game changer. And plus, you also have to account for a fact that he's also played in big finals, big ICC finals, big stage games, where you have sudden death situations as well. So from a mental perspective, he has gone over his course of his career, he's played those big ones as well. So he has the mentality for a big game, and if a clear mindset, if he is going to go be concentrating on white ball cricket, he can be an absolute legend he's already a legend. He can scale much more heights in the coming years.
I think there's a lot of people out there that think I don't like him. I think he's an immense player. I just think I don't think he's ever possessed that clear mindset in Test cricket, and it's been fantastic to see him perform like he has done in the IPL over the last few weeks. Like, let's get on to the Gujarat Titans. I've already done the intro, so just scroll back for that. Hardik Pandya. We spoke about him earlier when we talked about the Mumbai Indians there, but I guess there's a little bit of comparison with what we said about KL Rahul, but he's taken responsibility this season, hasn't he? He's obviously, as the captain, he's shouldered the burden of maybe not being quite as flamboyant and hitting the sixes that we may become accustomed to with Hardik Pandya. He's shown a lot more maturity.
Yeah, indeed. So one very interesting thing which came out of last night's post-match presentation, when he mentioned the fact that right at the start of the season, when the think tank were strategizing after the auction, they decided that he would bat in top three, or at number 3, number 4. And it's not that they decided at the start of the season. He also went on to say that in his local cricket, he's actually batted at that 3-4 position, and it's not an alienated position for him. He knows the know-how and what needs to be done batting at number 3 and number 4 in a T20 game. He has done it at a lower levels, and because Gujarat Titans went in with that strategy, kind of helped him. You never have seen Hardik Pandya scoring at about 130s and carrying the shape of that middle order, giving full freedom to the guys of likes of Miller, Tewatia, Rashid to play their natural game and to express themselves. So that's been major.
That's the luxury. Sorry, that's the luxury that Gujarat Titans had, though, isn't it? Because they had the finishers, and Hardik can bat properly, can't he? So it made sense, didn't it, to move him up and allow the likes of the Millers and Tewatias to play the Hardik Pandya role that we've seen him play previously. And I mean, mentioning Rahul Tewatia, I always love him. I think he's tremendous. I always think of that knock that he played for
Sharjah.
That was, at Sharjah. It's an incredible knock, wasn't it? Where the commentators were writing him off after about 13 balls. He'd hardly scored a run, and they were saying, "Oh, he's got to get out. This is embarrassing." And then just scroll on about 30 minutes, and he'd won the match after hitting, was it 5 sixes or whatever in the final over. He is somebody. I mean, he failed the fitness test, didn't he, for India? Or otherwise, he might have played a bit more international cricket by now, because Virat's got very high standards in terms of fitness. But his role for Gujarat Titans has been pretty special.
And he's worked on different dimensions of his game as well, which is why which would have helped him at the start of the season. What you saw is that you generally you see his strong shot is always the hoik over mid wicket, or where the bottom hand comes into the play, and that's his strong area. That's always been the case. You saw that even in this season. But what he's also kind of opened up a bit of a diaphragm in his 360 degrees horizon. He started to be more fluent through the offside as well, where that's added a major dimension to his game. And to add to all of this, he's also flourished against spinners. Now, what we saw statistically is that previously he used to just nurdle the ball around, not necessarily go after the spinners that much. This season, you saw that he's improved that game. He's sweeping the ball well, reverse sweeping. All these shots have been additionally that he's worked hard and worked against. and that's made him even more dangerous than what he used to, because he's been in a situation in this season where he has to kind of make sure that there is not a collapse towards the end, plus chasing 14, 15 runs and over. So that balance of defend and attack, or nurdle and attack, both against space and spin, has been a dream season for him.
And his bowling's decent as well, isn't it? Yeah, we kind of, he hits the headlines for these finishing knocks with the bat, but he's a very dependable bowler too, isn't he? So he's a big part of any team that has him, I think, going forward. Let's finish with David Miller for Gujarat Titans. I think he's been their player of the season. He's hit some incredible knocks towards the end of it. There was one, I was looking at some photos yesterday. There was the mic drop after one of the finishes, but he was there at the end yesterday too. He did try and finish it with a 6 and didn't time it, and allowed Shubman Gill to hit the winning runs in the end, didn't he? But I know David Miller from when he had a year at Yorkshire. He played in the T20 Blasts for Yorkshire one season, and he was terrific that season. He hits the ball so hard when he's firing and his timing's there. There is no fielding to David Miller, and he's had a period in the IPL where he's maybe not quite hit the big, got the big headlines and not quite found his feet. Gujarat Titans took a punt on him, and they've been richly rewarded, haven't they, this season?
Yeah, so that's another brilliant example of adding another feather onto the cap, and developing and recrafting some of the skills that you had. And as you mentioned, there are very few players who can hit the ball as hard as Miller. But a lot of the captains, when he had that lull period in the IPL, decided that they would try and introduce spin against Miller, and definitely taking the off spinners, taking the ball away from him. And he's not really well versed, a bit of a alienated situation to start off with spin straight away, because he's quite comfortable with pace. But that has been one amazing turnaround or change that he's done, where he's kind of playing spin also quite well, playing the necessary attacking shots against spin, has added that dimension to his game. And as you mentioned, the lull period was an extended lull period for him. His strike rate this season is 148, and the last time he was striking the ball like this in an overall season was back in 2015. So that's how long that lull period was. And as you rightly said, there were not many franchises who would have him as a first choice at the start of the season, but he's a different commodity now.
And I noticed as well, I mean, he was playing for Yorkshire in 2012, I think it was the season he played for Yorkshire, and he I can remember him telling me that he liked to take his time at the start, find his way in, maybe hit a few singles and go along and run a ball, and then explode after he got his eye in. But I think during that period where he did have that lull, I think he maybe took on too many big shots and paid the price, because he was playing too risky cricket, and then maybe lost a bit of confidence. But you could see in this campaign, it wasn't just shut your eyes and swing stuff. He was thinking as well, wasn't he?
Yes. So there was a lot of thought process and calculation happening, and that's why he could ace so many chases, knowing which is the big, because there was a lot of dynamics during those in the games in Mumbai, because of so many games being conducted in Mumbai, and we had to play on different strips on each day. So the calculation was very apt. If there is a particular area which is shorter boundary, if there is an area where there is a longer boundary, which bowlers he can target. So there was a lot of calculative thinking which was happening on his end as well as in Tewatia's end, and that has always been a standout feature of this IPL, the chase masters, and the way the Gujarat Titans middle order, the much celebrated middle order, 4 Hardik, 5 Miller, 6 Tewatia, and 7 Rashid Khan. These 4, would definitely get attention because of doing this consistently in this course of this IPL.
I mean, Rashid Khan's a monster, isn't he, with the bat? He hits it in ridiculous. Hits it anywhere he can. You can bowl a ball 2 foot outside of his off stump and it disappears over fine leg somehow, because he just has strange wrists and very strange shots, but it's very effective, isn't it? And then you've got his bowling. He's rather good. And he was rather excited yesterday, Merv, wasn't he? Rashid Khan. He's played in the IPL a lot. He's always taken the headlines. Sometimes batsmen sit on him and he doesn't necessarily take the wickets that he might otherwise do. But he said it was the biggest moment of his career. And yeah, probably you can't argue with that, can you? Gujarat Titans, though, rightly the right winners. I mean, they topped the group, they won the tournament. You can't really go too far beyond them in terms of saying that they don't justify winning it.
Absolutely, they definitely do justify winning it, because for me, while growing up, the champion teams that I've seen is that Steve Waugh team in white ball cricket as well as in red ball cricket, where you had, if you look at the 2003 campaign and the 2007 campaign in the ODI format, you had different players putting their hands up. You had Gilchrist one day, you had Simons the other day, if you had somebody else, giving them that complete performance. And that's what you saw with Gujarat Titans this season. You had different players putting their hands up, consistently seeing their teams home. There were some games this season where they have actually snatched victory out of jaws of defeat, literally. A situation where 21 is to get in six balls against Sunrisers Hyderabad, where Umran Malik has picked up 5 wickets, as Rashid Khan stole that game, and you had Gujarat winning, where nobody would have decided or nobody would have thought about it.
That's one of the great things I think about T20s. You get that word momentum, isn't it? But you get that belief that you can win from anywhere. And when it's going your way and the season's going your way, you can basically win any match from almost any single position as you go through it. I'm going to finish then with some quick fire questions to you. And I want quick fire answers, if that's okay. Who was your batsman of the tournament? Don't have to worry about stats. Your gut reaction here. Who was the batsman of the tournament?
Rahul Tewatia.
You go for Rahul Tewatia. The bowler of the tournament.
Bowler of the tournament, Mohsin Khan.
Mohsin Khan for you. MVP, all-round impact on the tournament.
Joss Butler.
Joss Butler is your MVP even. And your moment of the tournament, Merv, if you could basically relive a moment of the IPL that you've just watched, your favourite moment of the IPL would be?
My favorite moment of the IPL would be the game between Lucknow Super Giants versus KKR, where KKR almost pulled off an absolute screamer, chasing 20 odd runs. Marcus Stoinis finishing the game with that wicket of Umesh Yadav. That was an unreal game. KKR almost did the unreal thing.
Well, I wish you well with RCB next season. I wish myself well with Mumbai Indians. They must do better than they did this time around. And Gujarat Titans, very, very well played. IPL 2022 winners. And as we've just said, fully deserved. And I don't know if you follow football, Merv. Just one final point. We saw Nottingham Forest get promoted to the Premier League after winning the playoff final yesterday. And Steve Cooper, who's their manager, has done an incredible job, picked them up when they were bottom of the table, took them up the table into the playoffs and into the Premier League. He said, I've got 2 things to say to you. Go and spend some time with your families. They're the ones out there that are going to be most proud of you. So make sure you go and spend some proper moments with them. And then he said, and welcome to the Premier League. And they all went, ah. Nice to see the families around the team at Gujarat last night. Hardik Pandya and his other half showing a very long embrace and a stroll around the boundary edge. Because as I speak to a lot of players, and they always say the inspirations to them, fathers, wives, girlfriends, family, friends, they're important, aren't they? And it's IPL is a big franchise tournament. There's loads of money in it, but those families matter, don't they?
It is, and especially when in a tournament as we started, we thought it's a long tournament, 8-9 weeks, and it could be longer in case if there's some decisions taken. So during that period, during those ups and downs, I think family is the best support that you have, the inspiration that you would want to have around, and because they've been allowed in the bio bubble within the regulations, it is definitely a key element for any performance for any cricketer.
It would almost be against the human rights of somebody if they didn't allow their families into the bio bubbles for that extent of time. Wouldn't it be like being in prison, or even more so, because bio bubbles are not pleasant, as we've talked about a lot over the last 2 years. Merv, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the Cricket Badger podcast today. Interesting to chat to you about the IPL 2022. I'm sure we'll have you on, if that's okay, in the future to talk about IPLs and Indian cricket, etc. But thanks for joining me today.
Absolute honor to be here, and yes, really looking forward to whenever I get a chance again.
Good to talk to you. Thanks for watching and listening, everybody out there. If you only ever listen, you can look on the Twitter feed and watch the video and what have you of us chatting unedited. earlier on today, because we had that little pause halfway through where Merv was reconnecting. That'll probably disappear out the podcast, but you watchers get to watch me floundering around trying to talk for 5 minutes while Merv's reconnecting. But good to have you with us, everybody out there. Thank you to everybody out there in the IPL for giving us entertainment over the last 9 weeks. Make it a little bit shorter maybe in the future, but we'll see you again very, very soon indeed. I've been James the Cricket Badger. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you again very soon.